I don't know what the number means yet. I'm sitting across from 3 bank officials in a private room with gray walls and fluorescent lights that hum too loud, and they keep looking at each other like they're afraid to speak. The air conditioning is set too high, making the room feel sterile and unwelcoming. I can hear the muffled sounds of the busy bank lobby through the thick door, people conducting normal business while my world is about to shift on its axis. One of them, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, slides a folder across the table. Her hands are steady, professional, but I notice the slight hesitation before she lets go of the folder. She tells me to take my time. She tells me to breathe. And then she says a number that doesn't make sense. $95,000. My hands are shaking so hard the paper rattles. I'm wearing the same deep burgundy sweater I've worn for 3 days straight because I haven't had the energy to change, and there's a coffee stain on the sleeve from this morning when I could barely hold the cup. My hair is pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, dark circles under my eyes that make me look 10 years older than 38. I look like someone who has nothing. Someone who is nothing. And they're telling me I have $95,000 waiting for me. Inheritance from a relative I never met, held in escrow. The woman's voice is gentle when she explains, but I can't hear her over the sound of my own heart. I ask her to repeat it. She does. The number doesn't change. My sister saved my life, and she's been dead for 18 months. But let me take you back. Let me show you how I ended up in that room, looking like a ghost, holding a prayer card with numbers scribbled on the back. Let me show you what it looks like when your own child watches you drown and does nothing to save you. 6 months ago, I sat in my parked car in the driveway of my public housing apartment on the south side of Chicago, engine running, heat blasting, but I couldn't feel warm. The winter cold had seeped into my bones and refused to leave. It was the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache and your fingers go numb even inside gloves. I had been sitting there for 45 minutes, watching the dashboard clock tick forward, knowing I should go inside but unable to make myself move. The quiet suburban street with modest homes and chain-link fences stretched out in front of me, everything covered in a thin layer of ice that made the world look fragile, breakable, like me. I could see my apartment building through the windshield, 3rd floor, 2nd window from the left. I knew if I went inside, I'd have to face it. The small altar in the corner with candles I hadn't lit in weeks. The banana pudding layered with vanilla wafers sitting untouched in the refrigerator because no one was coming to eat it. His favorite Bible with passages he underlined in red ink on my nightstand, the only thing of my sister's I kept after cancer took her. I wasn't ready to be alone with those reminders. Not yet. So I sat in the car and watched my breath fog up the windshield and wondered how I had become this person. This woman with nothing. This woman whose own son had helped steal everything she had. The betrayal didn't happen all at once. It was slow. Careful. The kind of thing you don't see coming until it's too late to stop. My son married her 3 years ago, and I thought she was wonderful. I remember the first time he brought her home to meet me. It was a Sunday afternoon in spring, the kind of day when Chicago finally remembers it's supposed to be warm. She walked into my apartment carrying a bouquet of tulips, my favorite flower, though I had never told her that. She must have asked my son. She wore a yellow sundress and smiled like she genuinely wanted to be there. We sat on my couch and she asked about my life. Really asked, leaning forward with her hands folded in her lap like every word I said mattered. She asked about my late husband, and when I got choked up talking about him, she reached over and squeezed my hand. She said she could see where my son got his kindness from. I believed her. I wanted so badly to believe her. My son looked at her like she hung the moon, and I was happy for him. Happy he had found someone who seemed to care about family the way he did. When they got engaged 6 months later, she asked if I would help her plan the wedding, said she wanted me involved in everything because I was going to be her mom too. I cried. I hugged her. I thought I was gaining a daughter. She smiled at me during the wedding and called me Mom and said all the right things about family. The ceremony was small, held in a park near the lake with maybe 30 people. She wore a simple white dress and looked beautiful. During the reception, she gave a speech thanking everyone for coming, and when she got to me, she said I had welcomed her with open arms and made her feel like part of the family from day one. She said she hoped she could be half the mother I was. Everyone clapped. My son was crying. I was crying. She brought flowers to Sunday dinner and asked about my week and made me feel like I mattered. For 2 years, she was the daughter I never had. She remembered my birthday. She called just to chat. She brought over groceries when she knew money was tight. I loved her. I trusted her. When she came to me 6 months into their marriage with papers and that same sweet smile, I didn't question it. She said they needed my help to buy a house. Their credit wasn't good enough, she explained, and if I could just sign a few documents, they could get approved. She made it sound simple, generous, the kind of thing mothers do for their children. I signed without reading. I signed because she was family, and family helps each other. What I actually signed was power of attorney. Full access to everything I owned. Every account. Every asset. Every piece of my life. It took 6 months for me to realize what I had done. 6 months of small withdrawals I didn't make. Transfers I didn't authorize. She was careful at first, taking amounts I wouldn't notice immediately. 50 here, 100 there. I would log into my bank account and see transactions I didn't recognize, but they were small enough that I convinced myself I was forgetting things. Maybe I had bought groceries twice that week. Maybe I had paid a bill I forgot about. But then the amounts got larger. 200, 500. And then one day I logged in and saw that $5,000 had been transferred out of my savings. I called the bank. They told me the transfer was authorized. I had signed the authorization. I said I hadn't. They said I had given someone power of attorney, my daughter-in-law. I felt the floor drop out from under me. But then she got bolder. She transferred the deed to my rental property into their names. The small house my late husband left me when he died 8 years ago. The one thing that gave me a steady income every month. $500 that paid for groceries and utilities and kept me just above water. Gone. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. I remember that conversation like it was yesterday. I drove to their apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel, practicing what I would say. When she opened the door, she looked surprised to see me. Not guilty, just surprised. I asked to come in. She stepped aside, and I walked into the living room and saw new furniture. A leather couch, a big screen TV. Things they couldn't have afforded on their own. I asked her about the property, about the transfers. She smiled that same sweet smile and said it was better this way. They could manage the property more efficiently. They needed the income more than I did. And besides, I had given her permission when I signed the power of attorney. Legal permission. I tried to argue, but my son came out of the bedroom and I looked at him, waiting for him to say something, waiting for him to defend me. He just stood behind her, silent, staring at his shoes. He wouldn't look at me. That's when I knew I had lost him too. Then she started talking about my apartment. She brought it up casually at first, like it was just an idea. Did I really need all that space? Wouldn't I be more comfortable somewhere smaller? Somewhere they could help take care of me? She had found a nice facility, she said. Very affordable. I could move there and they could manage my finances, make sure everything was handled properly. The way she said it made it sound like she was doing me a favor. Like I was the one being unreasonable for wanting to keep my own home. She brought papers to Sunday dinner, set them down next to the banana pudding I had made, and waited for me to sign. When I refused, her smile disappeared. The mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold underneath, something calculating. She told me I was being difficult, ungrateful. She reminded me how much they had helped me, how much they had sacrificed. My son said nothing, just pushed food around his plate and avoided my eyes. They stopped visiting after that, stopped calling. The texts became demands instead of conversations. Sign the papers. Give us access. Trust us. But I had already seen what their trust looked like, and I wasn't giving them anything else. You know what desperation feels like? It's not dramatic. It's not crying in the shower or screaming into pillows. It's sitting in your parked car because you can't face going inside. It's eating the same can of soup for 3 days because you're afraid to spend money on anything else. It's checking your bank account every hour, watching the numbers shrink, knowing there's nothing you can do to stop it. I hired a lawyer with the last of my savings, and he confirmed what I already knew. His office was in a building downtown, the kind of place with marble floors and expensive art on the walls. I felt out of place the moment I walked in. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes that said he had seen too many cases like mine. He listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and told me the truth. The power of attorney was legal. The property transfer was legal. She had covered her tracks perfectly. We could fight it, he said, but it would take years and cost more money than I had. He suggested I consider bankruptcy. Start over. Those were his exact words. Start over. Like I was 25 instead of 38. Like I had time to rebuild from nothing. I thanked him and left his office and sat in my car in the parking lot and cried until I couldn't breathe. My sister would have known what to do. Her older sister, who protected her from everything until cancer took her. We were distant in my teenage years, when I was angry and stupid and thought I didn't need anyone. I was 17 and thought I knew everything. I said terrible things to her, told her to leave me alone, told her I didn't need a babysitter. She tried to keep me out of trouble, tried to warn me about the boy I was dating who was bad news, tried to help me see that I was throwing my life away. I didn't listen. I pushed her away for years, moved out at 18 and barely spoke to her for the next decade. But we reconnected before the end, those last 6 months when she was dying, and I finally understood what it meant to have someone who would fight for you no matter what. She called me one day out of the blue and told me she had cancer. Stage 4. The doctor said 6 months to a year. I drove to her apartment that night and we sat on her couch and cried together. She told me she didn't blame me for the lost years. She said she understood. She said she had always loved me, even when I made it hard. We spent those last 6 months making up for lost time. I visited her 3 times a week, drove her to appointments, sat with her during chemo, held her hand when the pain got too bad. She died just 18 months ago, still fresh enough to hurt every day. Fresh enough that I still reached for my phone to call her when something went wrong before remembering she was gone. She had nothing when she died. Hospital bills took everything. I paid for her funeral with a credit card I still haven't paid off. I didn't expect anything from her. Didn't want anything except more time. But she had always protected me. Always made sure I was safe, even when I didn't deserve it. Even when I pushed her away. And now she was gone, and I was drowning, and there was no one left to save me. The winter stretched on. The cold kept me inside and the windows fogged up from the warmth of the apartment, creating this weird isolation where I could see shapes moving outside but couldn't make out details. Everything felt blurry, distant. I stopped going to church because I couldn't stand the questions. People asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. Their concern making me feel more alone somehow. My pastor called twice. I didn't answer. He left voicemails saying the congregation was praying for me. That made it worse somehow. All those prayers and I was still drowning. I stopped lighting candles at my small altar in the corner because what was the point? God wasn't listening. My sister was gone. My son had chosen his wife over me. I was 38 years old and I had nothing. The deep burgundy sweater my daughter gave me years ago became my uniform. I wore it every day because it was soft and familiar, and because changing clothes required energy I didn't have. I stopped washing my hair as often, stopped wearing makeup. I looked in the mirror one morning and didn't recognize myself. The woman staring back was hollow, empty, someone who had given up. I can tell you right now, if you've ever felt this way, you know it's not about the money. It's about feeling like the world has decided you don't matter. Like everyone you trusted decided you weren't worth protecting. That's the kind of pain that doesn't go away just because you're still breathing. I started going through my things about 4 months into this nightmare. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to find something, anything, I could sell. I went through closets and drawers and boxes I hadn't opened in years. Old jewelry that turned out to be costume, clothes that were out of style or didn't fit, a few books that might be worth something at a used bookstore. I took them to a store on the corner and the owner gave me $12 for all of them. $12. I stood there holding the bills and felt like crying again. I was desperately searching for something to sell and finding nothing of value. And then I opened the drawer of my nightstand and pulled out his favorite Bible with passages he underlined in red ink, my sister's Bible. The one she had pressed into my hands the day before she died, too weak to speak, but strong enough to make sure I understood it was important. I remember that moment. She was in hospice, tubes and machines everywhere. I sat next to her bed holding her hand. She reached over to the small table next to her and picked up the Bible. Her hands were shaking so badly I had to help her. She pressed it into my hands and looked at me with eyes that were still clear, still fierce, even though her body was failing. She squeezed my hand. I promised I would keep it. I had kept it on my nightstand because it made me feel less alone, because sometimes I opened it and read the passages she had marked and felt like she was still talking to me. That night, I opened it looking for comfort, and a small card fell out, a prayer card with an image of St. Jude on the front. I picked it up and turned it over. On the back, in my sister's handwriting, was a lockbox combination written on a prayer card she kept in her Bible. Numbers I didn't recognize, and an address for a bank I had never heard of. First Mutual Bank, 4782 South Halsted Street, Box 347. I stared at those numbers for a long time. My sister had never mentioned a lockbox, never mentioned this bank. Why had she written this down? Why had she hidden it in her Bible? I didn't have answers, but I had nothing else. The next morning, I drove to the address. First Mutual Bank was a small branch in a neighborhood I didn't know, tucked between a laundromat and a convenience store. The kind of place that looked like it had been there forever, solid and unremarkable. I parked across the street and sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. What if the lockbox was empty? What if this was nothing? What if I was reading meaning into something that didn't exist? But I had come this far. I walked in holding the prayer card and asked to access the lockbox. The woman at the front desk, maybe 50 with tired eyes and a nameplate that said Janet, asked for identification. I showed her my driver's license. She looked at it, looked at me, looked at the card. Then she picked up the phone and made a call. She spoke quietly, and I couldn't hear what she was saying, but she kept looking at me while she talked. When she hung up, she asked me to wait. And then everything changed. Suddenly, there were 3 bank officials coming to verify my identity before saying a word. They introduced themselves. The woman with silver hair was named Margaret. She was the branch manager. The 2 men with her were from the legal department. They asked me to follow them. They took me to a private room. They asked me to sit down. They asked if I needed water. One of them, the woman with silver hair and kind eyes, kept looking at me with something that might have been pity or concern or both. She opened the folder and explained that my sister had come to the bank 2 years ago, shortly after being diagnosed with cancer. She had set up a lockbox with specific instructions. If anything happened to her, the contents were to be held in escrow until I came to claim them. No one else had access, just me. And inside the box was documentation for an inheritance from a great-aunt on my mother's side who had passed away 2 years ago and left money to family members she had never met. My sister had handled everything, made sure the money was protected, made sure it would be there when I needed it. The amount was $95,000. I sat in that chair and the world tilted sideways. I couldn't process what they were saying. $95,000. It didn't seem real. It couldn't be real. People like me didn't get saved at the last minute. Margaret was still talking. explaining something about paperwork and escrow and legal processes. But I couldn't hear her. I couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. I had been drowning for months, and now someone was throwing me a rope that shouldn't exist. The woman with silver hair asked if I was okay. I wasn't. I was crying so hard I couldn't breathe, my shoulders shaking, my face buried in my hands, not just because of the money, because my sister had known. Somehow she had known I would need this. She had protected me one last time, even after she was gone. She had made sure I would be okay. The woman pushed a box of tissues across the table and waited while I tried to pull myself together. One of the men brought me water. I drank it and tried to stop shaking. I kept thinking about the prayer card, about my sister's handwriting, about how she had tucked it into the Bible knowing I would keep it, knowing I would find it when the time was right. Some people never stop protecting you, even after they're gone. Have you ever been saved by someone you thought you had lost? Have you ever felt love reach across death itself to catch you when you were falling? That's what this was. That's what she gave me. Margaret explained that there would be paperwork, lots of it, verification processes, things that would take a few hours. She asked if I had time. I laughed. It was a broken sound, but it was something. I told her I had all the time in the world. They brought me forms to sign, documents to read. They explained everything carefully, making sure I understood each step. The inheritance had been held in a special trust. My sister had worked with a lawyer to set it up. She had specified that no one could access it except me, and only if I came in person with the prayer card that had the box number and combination. It was protection within protection. My sister knew what could happen, knew I might be vulnerable. She had made it impossible for anyone to steal this from me. One of the legal representatives, a man named David with kind eyes and a gentle voice, explained that this level of protection was unusual. He said my sister must have cared about me very much. I told him she did. I told him she always had, even when I didn't deserve it. I left the bank 3 hours later with paperwork and account numbers and a cashier's check made out in my name. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called the lawyer who had told me to consider bankruptcy. I told him about the money. I told him I wanted to fight. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said we had options now. Real options. The power of attorney my daughter-in-law had tricked me into signing didn't mean the property transfer was legal if it could be proven she had forged documents. He said he would look into it. He said not to tell anyone about the money yet. Keep it quiet until we knew what we were dealing with. I agreed. But staying quiet was harder than I expected. Because that night, my phone rang. My son. His voice was flat when he asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. He didn't believe me. He said his wife was worried about me. Said they wanted to help. Said they had been thinking about everything that had happened and maybe it was time to move forward. Forgive and forget. Family. I didn't tell him about the money. I just said I needed time. He sighed like I was being difficult and hung up. 2 days later, she showed up at my apartment. I was making banana pudding when I heard the knock. I almost didn't answer, but I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there, alone, holding a folder. She was dressed like she was going to a business meeting. Sharp blazer, heels, hair perfect. Every detail calculated. She looked like success while I stood on the other side of the door in my burgundy sweater and unwashed hair. She smiled when I opened the door. That same smile from the wedding, from Sunday dinners, from the day she handed me papers and stole my property. She asked if she could come in. I let her. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to see what she would say. Maybe because I was tired of running. She sat on my couch and set the folder on the coffee table and folded her hands in her lap like she was about to give me good news. She said she had been thinking. She said she knew things had been difficult between us, but family was family, and it was time to let go of the past. She said she wanted to help me, wanted to make things right, and then she opened the folder and pulled out new papers. She had heard about my inheritance. I don't know how. Maybe my son had guessed. Maybe she had been watching my bank accounts even though she wasn't supposed to have access anymore. Maybe someone at the bank had mentioned it. She said it was wonderful news. Life-changing. And she thought the fair thing to do was split it. 50-50. After all, they had been taking care of my property, managing things. This was just evening out the responsibilities. Family helping family? She slid the papers across the table and pulled a pen from her purse. She was still smiling. I looked at her. I looked at the papers. I looked at the pen. And I started laughing. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere dark and broken. The kind that sounds more like crying. She stopped smiling. I told her no. Just that. No. She blinked like she hadn't heard me correctly. She said I wasn't thinking clearly. She said I should consider what I was giving up. Her voice was calm, patient, like she was talking to a child, like I was too stupid to understand what I was doing. She said they could make my life very difficult if I didn't cooperate. She reminded me that my son was her husband, that I would lose him if I pushed this, that I would be alone. I told her I had already lost him. I told her to get out. She stood up slowly, smoothing her blazer, her expression hardening into something cold and sharp. The mask was completely gone now. She said I would regret this. She said she had been trying to be nice, but I was making a mistake. She picked up the folder but left the papers on the coffee table like she expected me to change my mind, like she thought I would cave once I had time to think about it. I watched her walk to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle and turned back. She told me I was a bitter old woman who would die alone. Then she left. I waited until I heard her car drive away, and then I called my lawyer. I told him everything. He said he had news too. The property transfer was invalid. She had forged one of the signatures on the deed. We could prove it. We could get everything back. We could file charges if I wanted. I sat on my couch with his favorite Bible in my lap and cried again. But this time it was different. This time it was relief. This time I wasn't alone. The legal process took 3 months. 3 months of paperwork and depositions and my lawyer slowly dismantling everything she had built. I had to testify about what happened. Had to sit in a room with her and her lawyer and explain how she had manipulated me. She stared at me the whole time with cold eyes, trying to intimidate me. It didn't work. Not anymore. My lawyer presented the evidence, the forged signature, the unauthorized transfers, the pattern of financial abuse. Her lawyer tried to argue that I had given permission, that I had known what I was signing, but the evidence was too strong. The judge looked at her with disgust when my lawyer finished presenting our case. 3 months of my son calling and texting, his voice getting more desperate each time. He didn't apologize. He just asked me to drop it, said it was tearing his marriage apart, said his wife was stressed, said I was being cruel. I didn't answer most of the calls. The ones I did answer, I told him the truth. His wife had stolen from me. She had manipulated me and lied to me and tried to take everything I had. And he had let her. He had stood there and watched it happen and said nothing. That was his choice. These were the consequences. He stopped calling after that. The day the judge ruled in my favor, the day the property deed was transferred back into my name and her power of attorney was revoked, I sat in the courtroom and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just exhaustion. My lawyer shook my hand and said we had won. I thanked him and walked out into the cold Chicago afternoon and drove home to my 3rd-floor apartment and made banana pudding that no one would eat. But the story didn't end there. Because she wasn't done. When my son's wife realized the money was truly beyond her reach, when she understood that I had protection now, legal protection and financial protection she couldn't touch, she did what people like her always do. They spread rumors that I stole the money. She told neighbors I had manipulated my dying sister into changing her will. She told family members I had hidden assets and lied about being poor to get sympathy. She painted me as the villain in a story where she was just trying to help, She went on social media and posted vague things about family betrayal and ungrateful parents. People who didn't know the whole story believed her. I got messages from distant relatives asking what was wrong with me, asking how I could do this to my son. For a while, I believed people might listen, might believe her. But the truth has a way of being louder than lies, especially in a neighborhood like this. People remembered how she had started demanding my property. They remembered how my son had stopped visiting. They remembered seeing me in that deep burgundy sweater day after day, looking more tired and hollow each time. They knew. And the ones who didn't know didn't matter as much as I thought they would. The real help came from someone I didn't expect. A stranger, random person who opened my eyes. I met her at the bank the day I claimed the inheritance, a woman in her 60s named Patricia who worked in elder financial protection. She saw me crying in that private room and waited until the bank officials left to introduce herself. She was tall with gray hair cut short and sharp brown eyes that looked like they didn't miss anything. She gave me her card and told me to call her if I needed help understanding what had happened to me. She said she specialized in cases like mine. She said she knew what I was going through. I called her 2 days later. She walked me through everything. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. She bought me tea and sat across from me and explained the power of attorney abuse, the property theft, the manipulation tactics my daughter-in-law had used. She had a folder with information, articles, statistics. She told me this happened more often than people realized. She explained how common this was, how many families she had seen torn apart by financial exploitation. She said she saw cases like mine every week. Daughters-in-law, sons-in-law, caregivers, even children who saw their parents as assets instead of people. She told me about resources, support groups, legal protections I didn't know existed. She gave me names of lawyers who specialized in elder abuse, organizations that could help. She said I wasn't alone. She said I wasn't stupid or weak or naive. She said I had been targeted by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. That conversation changed something in me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had done something wrong. I started to understand that what happened wasn't my fault. I started to believe I deserved to be safe, to be protected, to have something of my own that no one could take away. 6 months after the inheritance, I moved, not far. Just across the city to a retirement village with a pool and social events, a place where people my age were starting over or starting fresh, or just living quietly without fear. The community was gated, which made me feel safer than I wanted to admit. My new apartment was smaller than the one on the south side, but it felt bigger somehow. Cleaner. Safer. I had 2 bedrooms, which meant I could turn one into a studio. The walls were white and the floors were hardwood, and the windows let in so much light I had forgotten what that felt like. I painted the bedroom walls a soft blue, hung curtains, bought new furniture. Nothing expensive, but mine. Clean. Chosen by me. Because something unexpected happened after I moved. I started painting. I don't know why. I had never painted before. Never had time or money or space. But one afternoon, I walked past an art supply store and went inside and bought brushes and canvases and cheap acrylic paints. The woman who owned the store asked if I was a beginner. I told her yes. She smiled and helped me pick out supplies, told me not to overthink it. Just paint. I took them home and set up in my second bedroom and just started. Small landscapes at first. Trees and rivers and skies. Nothing special. But it felt good. It felt like I was creating something instead of just surviving. I painted for hours that first day. Lost track of time completely. When I finally stopped, my back hurt and my hands were covered in paint, and I felt more alive than I had in months. Then I moved to portraits. Faces of people I remembered. My sister. My late husband. My son when he was young, before everything went wrong. I painted my sister from memory. Her smile. The way her eyes crinkled at the corners. The strength in her face even when she was dying. I hung that painting in my living room where I could see it every day. Abstract pieces came last. Colors and shapes that didn't look like anything but felt like everything. Grief, relief, anger, hope. All of it on canvas where I could see it and control it and understand it. I sold 3 paintings last month at a community art show. Small amounts. $20, $40, $50. But it wasn't about the money. It was about being seen, being valued, creating something that mattered to someone else. Have you ever discovered a part of yourself you didn't know existed? Have you ever found purpose in the middle of loss? That's what painting gave me. That's what my sister's gift made possible. I honor my sister now in a way I couldn't when she was alive. I started a small business grant program for women over 50 starting over. Women who lost everything and need a chance to rebuild. Women like I was. Women like she always protected. The program isn't large. $5,000 twice a year to 2 women who apply with business plans and dreams and determination to keep going. I work with Patricia, the woman from the bank, to screen applications and make sure the money goes to people who really need it. We meet once a month to review applications. We read stories that sound like mine. Women who were betrayed by family. Women who lost everything to caregivers or spouses or children who saw them as resources instead of people. Women who are trying to rebuild. We funded our first recipients 6 months ago. One woman is opening a bakery. She makes cakes that look like art. She sends me photos every week of her progress. The other is starting a home cleaning service. She told me she had been homeless for 6 months after her daughter stole her retirement savings. Now she has a van and supplies and 3 regular clients. They send me photos and updates and thank you notes that I keep in a folder on my desk. My sister's money, the inheritance she protected for me, is multiplying. It's reaching women she never met and saving lives she never knew. That's what legacy looks like. Not monuments or buildings or names on plaques, just love that keeps spreading long after the person who started it is gone. My son called last month. It was late, past 10, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. He said he was sorry. Just that. I'm sorry. His voice was quiet, tired, broken in a way I had never heard before. He said his marriage was over. His wife had left him for someone else, someone with more money and better prospects. She had done to him what she did to me. Drained his accounts. Left him with nothing. He said he had been stupid. He said he should have protected me. He said he understood if I couldn't forgive him. I listened. I didn't say much. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Wanted to say I told you so. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad that it had taken losing everything for him to see what she was. Sad that we had lost years we could never get back. When he finished, I told him I loved him. I told him I would always love him. But I also told him that trust isn't something you can demand back. It's something you earn slowly over time through actions, not words. He asked if he could see me sometime. Maybe come to my new apartment. Maybe try to rebuild what we had lost. I said maybe. Someday. But not yet. I wasn't ready. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Maybe that makes me cold. Maybe that makes me unforgiving. But I learned something through all of this. I learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. I learned that some people will take everything you have if you let them, even people you love, even family. And I learned that my sister understood that long before I did. She understood that love sometimes means preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. She understood that protection doesn't end with death. It continues through the choices we make, the gifts we leave, the ways we guard the people we love even when we can't be there to do it in person. My antagonist's fate is complicated. They spread rumors that I stole the money, but no one believed them. Not after the court records became public. Not after neighbors saw me starting over while she moved on to her next target. My son divorced his wife 8 months after she left him. She married the new man 3 months later. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's doing the same thing to him that she did to us. Moving through his finances, gaining access, taking control. He's older, in his 60s, a widower with adult children who don't visit much. Easy prey. Maybe he'll see it in time, maybe he won't. That's not my responsibility. I don't feel satisfaction knowing she's still hurting people. I don't feel vindicated or triumphant. I just feel sad. Sad that there are people in the world who see family as something to exploit. Sad that my son spent years with someone like that and thought it was love. Sad that I lost so much time with him because of her manipulation. But I also feel something else. I feel protected. Not just by lawyers and bank accounts and legal documents, though those things matter. Protected by my sister, by her foresight and her love and her refusal to let me face the world alone, even after she was gone. That's a kind of protection most people never experience. I'm grateful for it every single day. I still keep his favorite Bible with passages he underlined in red ink on my nightstand. I still read it sometimes, looking for the passages she marked, trying to understand what she was thinking when she underlined them. But now when I open it, I don't just see her handwriting. I see her love. I see the woman who died 18 months ago but never really left. I see the sister who knew me better than I knew myself, who understood that I would need saving and made sure salvation was waiting when I needed it most. The prayer card with the lockbox combination is pressed between the pages, right at the Book of Ruth, the story of loyalty and family and women protecting each other. I don't think that placement was an accident. My sister didn't do anything by accident. Let me share something with you. Something I learned that might help if you're in a situation like I was. Financial protection. How to protect assets from exploitation. Did you know that in California, the law presumes fraud when a caregiver receives gifts in a will? It's designed to protect vulnerable people from being manipulated by those they trust. And Mexican law guarantees the right to dignity and respect for seniors, with specific protections against financial abuse. Every state has laws. Every country has protections. But you have to know they exist. You have to ask. You have to be willing to fight even when fighting feels impossible. If someone is pressuring you to sign papers you don't understand, stop. Don't sign. Get a lawyer first. Get a second opinion. Call a financial protection hotline. The National Center on Elder Abuse has resources. Adult Protective Services can investigate. Banks have fraud departments trained to spot financial exploitation. I didn't know these resources existed when I needed them. I do now. And if my story helps even one person understand that they have options, that they don't have to give in to pressure from family or caregivers or anyone else, then maybe my sister's gift extends beyond me. Maybe that's part of her legacy, too. I'm sitting in my apartment right now as I tell you this story. My new apartment in the retirement village with the second bedroom I turned into a studio. There's a canvas on the easel, half finished, colors I can't quite name yet. Blues and purples swirling together, something abstract that feels like peace. The pool outside my window is lit up even though it's too cold to swim. The water glows blue in the darkness and I find it calming. My small altar in the corner has fresh candles burning, and I lit them this morning without hesitation. I made banana pudding yesterday and invited my neighbor over to eat it. She's 72 and starting over after her husband died. We sat at my kitchen table and talked about loss and survival, and what it means to keep going when everything falls apart. She asked how I did it, how I went from homeless to here. I told her about my sister, about the prayer card and the lockbox, and the inheritance I never expected. I told her about Patricia and the lawyer and the way strangers became allies when family became strangers. She cried. I cried. We ate pudding and talked about making something beautiful from the wreckage. This morning I woke up and checked my bank account out of habit, even though I don't need to anymore. The numbers are stable now, safe, protected. But that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for proof that this is real, that I'm not dreaming, that I really did survive. Some mornings I still can't believe it. Still can't believe my sister saved me. Still can't believe I'm here, in this apartment, with paintings on the walls and money in the bank and a future that doesn't terrify me. I'm 38 years old, and I have a second chance. How many people get that? How many people get saved by someone they've already lost? The winter is almost over now. Spring is coming. I can feel it in the air, see it in the way the light changes and the ice begins to melt. The quiet suburban street with modest homes and chain-link fences is behind me. So is the public housing apartment on the third floor with a view of the street. So is the deep burgundy sweater I wore every day like armor. I donated it last week. It was time. I kept the prayer card and the Bible and the memories of the 18 months since my sister died, still fresh enough to hurt every day. But the hurt is different now. It's not the sharp pain of abandonment. It's the ache of missing someone who loved you completely, someone who protected you until the very end and beyond. That's a pain I can live with. That's a pain that reminds me I was loved. I am loved. Even now. Even after. So where are you listening from? Are you in a place where you feel safe? Are you facing something that seems impossible? Have you lost someone who protected you and wondered if you could survive without them? I want you to know something. You can. You will. Because protection doesn't end with death. Love doesn't stop when someone is gone. Sometimes the greatest gift people give us is the one we don't discover until we need it most. My sister knew I would need saving. She made sure I had what I needed to survive. She protected me one last time, and I'm using that protection to help others, to honor her, to keep her love moving through the world. If this story resonated with you, if you've been through something similar or you know someone who has, leave a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me how you survived. And if you want to hear more stories about family and survival and love that transcends death, subscribe. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because we're all in this together. We're all trying to protect the people we love. And sometimes the best protection is just making sure they know they're not alone.